morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us here this morning. My name is Ernesto Vasquez, also known as Junior. Go by either. More than welcome to call me whichever you're more comfortable with. Today, I am one of the project managers and main content creators here at CCTV Outlet. And today I will be more than happy to show you guys a bit of our recently acquired LPR technology. And when I say LPR, I'm proud to say actual license plate recognition. I'm sure many of you are aware we have had license plate capture in one form or another for a few years now. And while that's great, it's definitely nice to be able to finally offer an actual algorithm that is capable of reading the plates and storing that information in a database. In any event, let's go ahead and get into it here. By the way, we do try to keep these things relatively informal in the sense that, for the most part, I try to keep you guys muted just to minimize background noise and things like that. But at any point, if you do have a question, an interjection, something you need me to clarify, you may unmute yourself and jump in. Even more welcome is if it's not something terribly urgent and you can put it in the chat for us. That way I can kind of just get to it as I at a more natural pace. And the chat is open for public discourse as well as private, in case you do want to ask me something or make any comment to me that for whatever reason you do not want to share with the rest of the group. That being said, let's go ahead and get our screen share going here. This is our IPLP2VZ. It is a 2-megapixel Starlight IP bullet camera. If you guys are not familiar with Starlight technology, it's basically a backlit sensor on the camera that allows it to pick up color in much darker settings than cameras are typically able to without that Starlight technology. So it allows the camera to stay in color in very, very dark scenes, which is very nice, and also maintain a high level of fidelity and quality, even in in darker scenes, which historically cameras do suffer a bit in quality, and finding those scenes rather challenging, which is why you typically see them switch to black and white as soon as it gets even a little dark. But these cameras will stay in color to a much darker degree. Even when we do have them go into night mode, we have 164 foot of IR, which is good, not only for the long range, but also, as you'll see here in a bit in some of our examples, it's crucial for nighttime plate capture, because that nighttime plate capture, you're gonna want there to be a high contrast between the characters and the plate itself. And the way that you normally achieve that is by having the IR light bounce off of the reflective backing of the plating, and that'll basically show high contrast against the dark images. But you guys will see some examples of that in a little bit visually, and that'll tell the story a lot less boringly than I am now. So let's move along here. This camera also, if you notice here in the picture, is very conveniently comes with its own junction box that's already part of it. So that back mounting box that you see there, that does come with the camera. It comes apart, and it does have nice amount of room in there for you to make your connections or whatnot. Close that right back up, and then you have your weather tight exit out the back for the cables. And we also have the SD card slot available on these cameras, which is great if you intend to use this. Well, there's two reasons you would want to use that, actually. In the context of using the camera in standalone mode, which this camera is perfectly capable of doing. If you wanted to put this camera by itself somewhere on a gate without a recorder to control access with plate whitelist and blacklist, you can do that. And the SD card would help do that, because it would help you to store local images and snapshots and things like that, so you can at least have some record of what the camera saw and what, which plates triggered it or which plates are rejected. And also in the context of connecting it to the recorder, which definitely opens up some additional functionality, and we'll get into all of that in the next few slides. When you have, excuse me, when you have an SD card loaded in this camera and pretty much any of our signature series cameras, if you're using the camera with one of our signature recorders, we have what's called a, what is it that's coined like ANR, automatic network retrieval technology. The basics of that is that if you have an SD card in the camera, the SD card can be configured to constantly record to the SD card. And when you have it set up that way, if for whatever reason there's an interruption between the recorder and the camera connection, when the connection is reestablished, the recorder will actually go ahead and pull, thank you so much, will actually pull that missing video back onto the recorder, so that when you go back into the recorder to play back, even that time period where the camera had lost connection, you'll see the video for it, because it will have been recovered from that SD card. That, oh, by the way, this camera is NDAA compliant, which means that you will be able to use it in government projects and some of those more stringent applications. It is also ONVIF compliant, which means it's very easy to tag onto third-party recorders, where you will not get the benefits of the interfacing that I'm going to show you in a bit with the recorder. But again, this camera has the plate reading algorithm built into it itself. So even in the context of connecting this camera to a third-party system, we have a couple of situations, a couple of customers actually, where someone's using this camera. They had an application where they already had an existing VMS, already had existing, high-end cameras. They just needed to add a LPR solution. They added our camera via ONVIF to be able to have recording full time and through motion detection of, events of when vehicles and even people or whatnot pass by. But more importantly, in this case, the camera itself, because of its built-in alarm inputs and outputs and the built-in algorithm, built-in database management, the customer is able to keep track of plates stored inside the camera, set up whitelists, blacklists, and allow the camera to go ahead and function as a, basically access control for the entry of a condo association. And that's basically the camera is running all of the LPR functionality between its own algorithm and the alarm output to control the physical entry and exit. So there you have it. I mean, with the ONVIF protocol, you can go ahead and tag this onto an existing system and still take advantage of the LPR. Now, something important that you want to keep in mind when you are using a camera of this nature is that there are going to be certain physical installation requirements that you're going to want to adhere to, because if you don't, like you'll see in some of our examples where we mounted the camera a little bit too high, you can start to lower the accuracy of the algorithm. Let's move on here to the next slide. So this information here is very important. What we see here is an infograph that's displaying what the optimum physical parameters plate capture. Sorry, guys. So as we can see here, the optimal height to mount a camera for plate capture is going to be about 5 to 6 feet if we're trying to stay in this one lane, less than 13 feet side of things. You'll notice we also have numbers here for what's essentially 2 lanes. At that distance, you can mount the camera a little bit higher because you're going out a little bit further in distance to get the right field of view. But in any case, you'll notice that the optimal height, even in that context, is between 6 and 8 feet. So we're talking about an effective height of 5 to 8 feet. If you think about it, that is pretty typical when you drive into a lot of these gated communities or secure locations where there is plate capture going on. You'll notice that that camera is typically mounted pretty much just above the trunk height of the hood, somewhere in that vicinity. And that's for good reason, It's because optimally, or for optimal plate capture, I should say, you want your angles to be as on center of the axis as possible. You want to be less than 30 degrees height. You want to be less than 45 degrees in from left to right. And you'll see in my examples that we're pretty good from left to right. But as far as the height, because we were taking advantage of an existing eave that we have out here back in the loading dock, we didn't realize that it was going to throw off the angle that much. And we still got some decent plate reads, as you'll see in the example, but you do want to be mindful in your installations of this. Oh, and another piece of the puzzle where we could have done better, and you guys will notice with me as we review the slides, is if you notice here in the upper right-hand corner, excuse me, of these examples, it mentions that you want the car to be horizontal as possible. You do not want it to be off tilt in the image. And I was noticing this morning, as a matter of fact, how off tilt our example camera was mounted, and I'm sure that's not helping things. In any event, the plate also needs to be a certain amount of pixels on the screen for the algorithm to be able to pick up the characters optimally. And you're going to find that the pixel density you're looking for is usually achieved by either monitoring one lane with about 10 to 12, maybe 13 feet of width. That's the field of view that this camera gives, pretty much at 100 feet out if you were to max out the motorized lens. As a matter of fact, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that earlier. This camera has a 4.7 to 4.7 millimeter motorized lens. That's going to give you a nice long range from just within a few feet to all the way out to 100 feet to be able to get the right width of basically one car lane, which is going to get you a perfect amount of pixels on plate. On the other side of that spectrum or of that range, you can expect to be able to still get very good accuracy even with 2 lanes and having 2 vehicles going simultaneously. You would still be on the more closer to the 90 pixels per inch side of that range. So you would still be able to accomplish that, but optimally, you want to be in that 10 to 13 foot 1 lane range, nice and flat vehicle so that the characters present themselves nice and uniformly with very minimal tilt. And you want to make sure your angles are on center as much as possible. The good news about this camera is since it's pretty much geared towards that slow moving vehicle application, again, gate entries, maybe a stop sign. The idea is that for this algorithm to work optimally, you do want the vehicles to be coming to at least slower than 18 miles an hour point in the field of view. And for most applications, the settings out of the box, which is what you see here on the screen, are going to work. Actually, the settings that you see on the screen, except for down here where it says control mode. Where it says control mode under elimination, you'll see I changed it to custom because that's going to tie into the next slide I'm going to show you guys. But aside from that, everything you see here is pretty much how it comes from default with the control mode set to automatic. Those settings we find are perfectly suitable for 90% of applications out there. That goes for day as well as night, because a lot of these condo associations and townhouse communities and HOAs and things like that, a lot of them have very good lighting built into the actual entrance where these cameras are being mounted. So more often than not, even at nighttime, those scenes are not particularly challenging for this camera, and it's going to do fine right out of the box. Every once in a while, you are going to have that application where it's mounted somewhere that there is not sufficient lighting, and you are going to have to play a little bit with the infrared levels of the camera just to make sure that you get that nice contrast between the plate and the background that I was mentioning to you guys earlier. And the way you would achieve that, which is what I want to show you here, is by locking this illumination control mode into custom level, and then you start playing with the near illumination and far illumination levels until you get to the intensity that looks like the picture that you desire. That ranges from 0 to 1,000. So the way I do it is like, I'll start at one extreme, see how that looks, back it to 500, back it down to 500, see if I overshot or if I need to go further. And that way I'm kind of, hopefully within 6 to 10 clicks, I'll kind of get it into a nice range, which is what you'll see now in this oncoming example. So here, what you see is during the day, again, without any tweaking or anything, this thing just picks up a beautiful plate right out of the box. Funny enough, here you'll notice that even though it picked up the plate correctly, that skew is terrible. That is not very horizontal. We could have done much better with the camera placement on that in that regard. And this camera is actually mounted a good 12 to 13 feet in the air, which is more than double what they recommend. And again, that's our fault. We will find a creative way of getting that camera down there, lower out there for future demonstrations. But for now, and because of the design of the building and what we're have to work with out here, this is as good as it got. And unfortunately, it is a little bit high. You're going to want yours to be a bit lower. But in any event, here we have an example at the web browser of how it looks when you do have a good field of view. You'll notice car is in the frame, and we still have about a foot and a half left over on either side. So that puts us in that 10 to 12 foot field of view that we were aiming for. Gives us nice pixel density. I mean, you can see just by looking at it how legible that plate looks to the eye. Again, it throws off the algorithm a little bit that it's skewed, rotated in that way that it is, a bit tilted. But even then, as we're here on this screen, I'll take advantage to let you guys know that if you were using the camera in standalone mode, this, in other words, not connected to any recorder, this is essentially what your interface would look like. And as you had cars roll through here, which I believe I have some video clips of in a little bit that you'll be able to see, as cars roll through here in real time, this screen will start to create a list of the plates, the times of the capture, and you'll have access to these snapshots on the right-hand side, which again will get recorded to the SD card if you have an SD card in there. And as I mentioned a second ago, you're going to, if you have a challenging nighttime scene, what you're going to want to do with these cameras is mess with the intensity of the IRs. Here you'll see different variations of me overshooting and undershooting until I started getting closer to the results that I was looking for. You'll find then these last two here at the bottom were the ones that I felt were giving me not only the best visual clarity, but also allowing the algorithm to work its magic as best as possible. I'm going to pause here for a quick second because I do see someone dropped a question in the chat, and I want to make sure I'm not ignoring you guys. And as a matter of fact, this would be a good time to stop and ask in general if you guys have any questions. I think I went on there a bit more than usual without checking in on you guys. Someone is asking how much video capture can be stored on the 128 gigabyte storage SD card, and what is the max range on the camera again? If you mean the max range as far as like the distance that we can effectively capture plates at, the lens goes from 4.7 to 47 millimeter. At the end of that range at 47 millimeter, to get a 10 to 12 foot wide field of view, you're looking at about 100 feet. The math worked out to literally something like 104 feet. So that's where we would feel comfortable stating that limitation is at. You can expect to be able to get decent plate reads out to 100 feet. And as far as how much video can be captured on the camera, with 128 and 1 2 megapixel camera, I wouldn't be surprised if you can record even a week or more. But you got to keep in mind, in the context of what this is meant to do, if you have that thing set to record only when there's an event, in other words, only when a car goes through there, and even further than that, a lot of these cases might only be using the SD card to save snapshots. I mean, as you can imagine, at that point, you might be able to save months, if not a year's worth of data on there out of a camera like this. Because at the end of the day, it's only 2 megapixel. Because of the optics, you don't need a lot more than that to get good plate captures. So in that regard, it doesn't consume a lot of SD card storage. Does anybody else have any questions so far? I think I saw someone raise their hand virtually. If you'd like to unmute yourself and ask me a question, or if you'd like to type it into the chat box, more than welcome to.
Yes, sir. Enrique, right?
I'm Ernesto.
Ernesto, thank you, Ernesto. So along the same lines for these questions, can you go back another slide or two? You went to the settings page, like you could adjust the illumination and stuff.
Sure.
Thank you. So as you noticed with the pictures that you just sent, sometimes you have to adjust it even within the night. It's like, all right, crap, I need to change it. So I'm actually reading the license plate. Do you have the ability to, are you willing to put in the ability to have different adjustments? So it's like, hey, let's say I spent a week here. Some nights are darker than others, or some cars have a brighter backlight than others. So right now we can adjust the camera itself. But could we do between this time and that time, just like a computer with its nightlight? Could we do, it goes from daytime to nighttime, and then within nighttime, there's a couple levels. Are you able to do that yet? Are you willing to?
I'm really glad you asked that question, because I didn't think it was worth going too far into detail into that in this presentation, but we absolutely can do that. If you look on this same screen here towards the top of the middle area here, you'll notice that there's a drop-down section that's actually collapsed in this picture that says scenes. What that allows us to do is it has 5 configurable scenes, which, is just a different word for like templates or configuration or whatnot. You can save up to 5 different variations of all of these settings, and then you can actually set each scene, to continue with their terminology, to kick in at whatever scheduled time you choose on whatever day of the week. So it's totally scheduled. You can say, use my nighttime settings from this time to this time, and then during the day, go back to these settings. Does that help? Does that cover what you were?
Yes, that answers that question. Thank you. And the other question is, when you do go back to the SD card after it being on for a while, and you get that data back, the data from it that's being stored, do you need to manually remove the SD card and switch it out, or does it automatically upload to a database and then wipe itself so it, you have that room back?
You can totally manage it from the actual GUI that we see here through Internet Explorer or through Edge or through Chrome or whatnot. I want to say it's in the system or under local parameters, but under one of those two, you'll see where the SD card options are, and in there you can schedule it, you can format the SD card, and you can do export, import, things like that. It's pretty well thought out in that regard.
Good to go. That's all I have. Thank you, Ernesto.
Thank you. I appreciate your questions. Those are good ones. Very good ones, because yes, that scenes stuff is very important. You're absolutely I can see the value in that, and yes, thank you for forcing me to go there. Yes, definitely. We have 5 scenes available. All right, so we got our nighttime shots. Oh, okay. So further along the lines of some of the things that this camera can do on its own without even without being tagged onto a recorder, is here you see, for example, how it would allow us to set certain policies regarding if we're going to let cars in. Which car are we going to let? Any car in that's not blacklisted? Are we only going to let cars in that are whitelisted? Do we want the unidentified vehicles, in other words, vehicles that show up without a plate or where the plate is obscured? Do we want to see reports and entries regarding those vehicles, or do we want them to be ignored? We can import and export our lists to share them between different cameras or different systems. I'm sorry, someone's asking a question in the chat. Will this LPR camera work? Oh, I'm sorry. What distance should the camera be from the vehicle? You want the distance that the camera is from the vehicle to be enough to put the vehicle in about a 10 to 12 foot field of view. So using this as an example, that camera has a lens that goes from 4.7 to 47 millimeters, meaning you'll be able to get this same view that I'm showing you here anywhere from, I don't know, 10, maybe as close as even 5 feet, all the way out to 100 feet. The furthest would be about 100 feet, where you would still be able to expect to get that width. And then the next question is, will this LPR camera work with any NVR or Eclipse branded ones only? So because it's OnVIF compatible, it will let you grab the video and even do motion detection and simple things like that on third-party recorders. You won't have access to the LPR features specifically that I'm going to show you in a little bit regarding how they interact with my recorder. But you can still use the camera for LPR in the sense that the camera itself is the one that's running the algorithm and maintains the database. So you can still go into it through its menu that I'm showing you here and be able to add plates, create blacklist, whitelist, and get snapshots even emailed to you if you like directly from the camera. It's just that none of those LPR functionalities specifically would be available through the interface of your recorder, if that makes sense. You would just have to do it through my camera. But otherwise, the video would come in fine through OnVIF. The next question we have here is, does the camera support text overlay in video stream of plate? Not exactly. It stores the data, the text data separately. So you would be able to do a search for that data. Actually, as a matter of fact, those are some of my next slides where you'll see how the system displays that data when you go into playback mode or into like a search for playback mode, but it does not visually overlay it onto the camera video stream. Even though as I'm saying that, I'm realizing that that's such an easy thing to do, that there's a good chance that we just never played with the toggle that's in there. And even if it's not in there, I'm sure I can get the engineers to add that, because it would be just such a no-brainer to add that as one of the OSD fields if it's not in there already. You know what? I'm actually glad that you asked that, sir. I'm not saying your name because you sent me that message in private, but I'm gonna research that when we get out of here, because it might already do it. It's probably one of the OSD functions. So I'm gonna find out. Oh, perfect. I will, because now I'm curious. It might have it. I don't want to say it has it if I'm not sure, but it might already have it. And if not, I know I can get that added. I appreciate the email address. Sorry, guys. Let me just make a note of this really quickly. That's a good one. That's a good one. We might be able to already. If not, I'm sure I can get it added, but that's a good one. I like that. That's a good question. And then the second question he asked me is, does the camera, does it support text output of the plate number that can be captured by an external system like a database server? Okay. You and I got to get together and go through the camera menu and see if there's some stuff in there that might help you, because full honesty here, this camera has a lot of advanced features in the menu that I myself have not had a chance to fully explore. There are some options in there that have to do with external databases and things like that. So we definitely may be able to do what you're trying to accomplish. But again, I would much rather verify and see if we can come up with something, rather than sit here and say like, yes, the things that I'm only half to 75% sure about. Okay, so that pretty much covers all the questions for now. Thank you guys for your patience. We'll get back here to the slides. The last thing I want to say about this slide that I don't think I mentioned before I got into the questions was that it's nice that we have the option for if you look down here towards the bottom, you'll notice that well, not only towards the bottom, but if you notice the allow list and the block list both have matching mode toggles where you can say exact match or you can say partial match, which is nice because you don't always have the exact plate info of the plate of interest. So it's nice to be able to say, well, look, as long as if you even see, you know, ABC, I want to know about it, or I want you to block that guy so I can walk over and get a look before we give access, or, you know, whatever the case may be. Aside from that, in the browser of the camera itself, again, here we have the ability to create our lists. And by creating our lists is how we handle the different, you know, functionality of control. We can create a list and call that a white list. We can create a list and call that a black list. And that way we can take advantage of these parameters where we say, you know, I want to know when one of these vehicles that is on this list passed by here, or when one of the vehicles that's not on this list passed by here, or will we let these any of the vehicles in except these vehicles, will we let only these vehicles in? All of that can be set at the camera browser menu and can all be scheduled, as you see here. And not only scheduled, but you also have the different, what's the word I'm looking for, actions that the camera can take when one of those criteria is met. So if I said, I want you to go by list X, and I want you to, anytime there's a match, I want you to go ahead and send me an email, and I want you to let them through. And I want you to set off my alarm output. I mean, look, there's tons of stuff you can do with this if you get creative enough. It's very well thought out here and very flexible. So again, once you have that all set up correctly, you'll find that here in the browser, you'll get real-time play reads, and those reads will stack up here as different cars pass through. And then here is an example of, if you do have it tied into our recorder, for example, you can do playback. You can pull up like a vehicle search, which is what you're seeing in this case, and it'll show you a thumbnail of whenever it picked up a plate with some quick information about the plate read and the car itself and when it was the image was taken. And you would be able to take advantage of this is basically what the live display looks like at our NVR. And when you have these cameras tied in, you'll notice here on the right-hand side, you start building up a list of thumbnails of every time a plate was captured. And that's not only super convenient for operators, but it makes it very easy to do playback. You can just click on any one of those thumbnails and it'll take you right to that video. Now, something to keep in mind is if you are going to connect this to our NVR, it is going to require just a little bit of extra steps that I want to show you guys here, because if you don't, if you're not aware of these steps, you might end up spending a little longer than you'd like to, sitting there wondering why you're not getting plate reads on the NVR. And I want to make sure to save you guys from that headache. I'm going to stop for a quick second because someone did ask a message here in the chat. If you create a list and import it, does the list need a special format? Is it TXT or doc? The import and export list, it works on CSV, on Excel basic format. It's very easy. What you do is when you want to create that list, all you have to do is go into the menu. Before doing anything, just say export list. When you say export list, it'll ask you where. Choose somewhere easy like your desktop, your documents. And once you export that list, you're going to find that it basically created a file that says like users.csv. When you open that file, it already has the columns, rows. It already has the rows labeled for you where it'll say, plate, access, yes or no, and a couple of other fields that are relevant there. You just fill in each column for the correct data that you want for each plate. You save the file, and then when you re-import it, it'll bring all that into it. So it takes all the guesswork out of it. I understand that this is plate recognition, but what about smart intelligence to detect plate swapping? Like someone put a plate on another car. We could definitely talk about that further. If you want to call in or email me, that's a little bit out of the scope of this. I think we can do that with other analytics. I don't have like exactly a plate swapping analytic. That's a little specific, but I'm sure between like intrusion detection and cross-lining and things like that, we would know if somebody was trying to like mess with the plate of a car that was in the scene. But no, I suppose that if you walked into my scene and changed the plate, my camera would just see it as a different plate, and you would basically have a different hit that you would see for the same car or something like that. You got me. That's a good one. That one I would not conquer with only this camera. That one I would have another camera pointing at that where that car is parked and take advantage of some other analytics, but don't exactly have plate swapping. You got me on that one. So yeah, if you're hooking up the camera to the recorder, you definitely want to make sure that you go into the camera and come here into system, where you will go to the platform section here. You're going to make sure that all this stuff on the screen is how you see here. Not exactly, obviously, your settings are going to be a little bit unique, but what's important is that you have the DVR that you're connecting the camera to. You're going to put its IP address here where it says server IP. The server port is going to default to 5073, and that's what it defaults to at the recorder. So if you didn't mess with that at the recorder, you shouldn't have to mess with it here. So the things that you do have to worry about, the device ID. The device ID is going to default to just like 001 or something like that. That's not going to work. That's not going to work in this context. If you're hooking it up to the MVR, you have to give the camera a device ID that is 20 digits long. Don't ask me why. I didn't design that part of the system. I want to slap that guy too. I feel like 5 digits would have been plenty. But anyway, 20 digits. And out of those 20 digits, 11 through 13 must be 119. So yeah, the number has to be unique for each camera. If you're going to have more than one camera, just change the last number to something else. To give you an example, this was the third camera I set up on this network. So you see it has 125. That's because the first one I set up, I just set as 123 at the end. When I added another one, I made it 124. So this guy just happened to get 125 as part of the sequence. But the idea is that you want that last number to be something unique. Even the first numbers, everything aside from that 119 can be unique. But the 119 specifically needs to land in the 11 to 13 spots. It's like up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, select, start, man. I don't know. We want to make sure you guys are paying attention. But the important part is that we got to get that right. Aside from that, the last thing you have to worry about on this screen is just making sure that you get the username and password in here for your DVR. And this is a great time to remind you guys that we have awesome tech support on staff here that's willing to walk you through all this stuff and even connect to your computer and do it for you if necessary. So please don't get intimidated or nervous about having to remember any of this stuff or thinking any of this stuff is confusing. I'll do it for you. We'll do it for you. We just like to show you guys this stuff so it doesn't look scary when you come across it. But yeah, on this screen, as long as you have a unique device ID, as long as you have the username and password correct for your recorder and the right IP address, you should be golden. That will allow you to then move on to the recorder, excuse me, where you will similarly go to a section called the Video and Image Database, and you will come here to where it says Configure VIID Local. Here, I did not have to change anything regarding the local ID or the local port. All that stays the same. What I did have to do, that you will have to do also, is come down to the camera number that you are using for the LPR camera. In this case, it's tagged onto my recorder as camera 7. You want to come down to that camera number, and you're going to input this same device ID that we assigned the camera, right? We're here back in the camera menu. This is the ID we assigned it. We're inputting that number here as the channel 7 channel ID. That's it. That's all I had to do here. I didn't have to go into advanced. I didn't have to do anything else. Just put that ID number, hit save. And then when I, refresh the screen, this online thing here on the right hand was showing as online. And that's when I knew I was ready to go pop the proverbial champagne. Once you have the recorder and the camera associated, you can do neat stuff like this vehicle search, where you get the thumbnails of the different times that the algorithm picked up a plate. And again, we have NVR playback. Let me start from the beginning here, sorry. We have NVR playback available to us through this interface. Here we go. So at the recorder, you would right click, you would say VCA search, vehicle search. You can get specific with times and dates and cameras if you want, but I'm just gonna go ahead and click search here for the sake of brevity. And you'll see that it right away loads up a bunch of unique thumbnails, and I can click on any one of these individual thumbnails and I will see a quick preview of the license plate that generated the clip. Very nice, very convenient. And if you look here up top, you can say backup all, you can say backup, you can export results. Makes it very easy to get your video of interest out of there very quickly. Aside from the playback, as you would imagine, we have access to the same configuration options in the recorder that we saw at the camera browser. That's so that we can configure pretty much all that same stuff without having to go into the camera menu separately. So here, just like we saw earlier in the camera, we have the ability to add plates to either a whitelist or a blacklist that we created here at the recorder. And using those lists, we can set up tasks where we tell the recorder what we want it to do when a plate is matched or when a plate is not matched. Do we want it to send an email? Do we want it to not send, and we can schedule it is basically what we're seeing here. And yeah, that's what gives us the this beautiful interaction between the recorders and the cameras, which again, at the end of the day, the cameras are perfectly capable of creating a scenario where they control gates with their own plate whitelist and blacklist. But it is always nice to tie it into our recorders and get that full set of features. Can this camera recognize motorcycle plates? That's a good question. I want to say that it will, because the font is similar and the plate format is similar, but since those characters are a bit smaller in scale, I would argue, that's a great question. I would argue that what that would affect or alter would be the parameters we were talking about earlier, right? So let's say, for argument's sake, how we established that at 100 feet, you would still get pretty good pixels on plate for a vehicle. Let's say, for a motorcycle, maybe you don't want to, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, you don't want to get that close to the threshold. Maybe you'll say 70 feet or 80 feet would kind of be your max, because now you're trying to pick up a smaller set of characters. But that's a good question. Other than that, I don't see why it wouldn't. It's basically green characters on a white plate with a little orange thing in the middle. Thank you, Gary. You had some great questions there, and I know that I have some homework here to get with you on. They're great questions. And in general, thanks everyone. You guys asked a lot of good questions, no interruptions. If you guys have any other questions, oh, you know, for bonus data here, since you guys are still hanging out, something that did come up in the last couple of days here at the store with a customer that I might as well share with you guys in case it helps. So this limitation, right, or this specification rather, that we share with you guys, where the cars should be going under 18 miles an hour for the plate algorithm to be accurate, that's valid, and we stand by that all day, because that plate algorithm does need a certain amount of frames and a certain amount of pixels to be able to do its job properly. Okay, that being said, I want you guys to know that the hardware and the optics inside of that camera still make it very suitable for plate capture. Notice I'm saying capture. For plate capture, even at much higher speeds than the camera is able to recognize plates at. And I apologize if that sounds a little confusing. What I'm trying to say is, yes, the internal plate reading capabilities of the cameras may very well max out at 18. After that, you're going to start getting some wonky results. But that camera can very well be used in scenarios where you're using it with a third party, like specialized plate capture camera. Those cameras can do a lot more with a lot less info. So with faster moving cars, which equals less frames of data, you're going to still be able to get very accurate plate reads with our camera. And in a lot of cases, customers are not even using any kind of specialized software. They're just doing it old school, where they just want to be able to pause that video when the car is when the plate's in the image, and be able to actually see a legible plate. Which, if you guys have done that before with a non-specialized camera, or a camera that you didn't tweak correctly to that application, you probably tried to pause on a plate and just saw a smear across the screen. You can't really make out anything. So what I'm trying to say here is that don't forget that if you have an application where you do need to do plate capture, or you're going to use a third-party software to do the plate recognition, and you do need something that can go a bit, capture plates at a bit faster speed, I want you guys to have the confidence that with this camera, you can still get very clear plate images of cars, even going as fast as 40, 45, 50 miles an hour. We do it. If any of you guys are familiar with our location, you know that the vehicles in front of our store zoom by pretty fast. And in those tests, we haven't gotten the algorithm to do as good as it does at the slower speeds, but in the context of being able to pause that video at the right moment and see a clear, legible plate, definitely can be done with this. And we have its big brother coming soon. That one doesn't have the algorithm built in. That one is purely geared towards high speed, long distance capture. But that guy is coming very soon, the IPLP2VZ. You guys should keep an eye out for that. That thing is, it's a bit of a monster. It's heavy, but it's got up to like 147 millimeter lens. So you'll be able to get the right pixel density for a plate capture, outward of like 250 feet, maybe even a bit further. But I digress. If you guys don't have any more questions for me, or anything that you'd like me to reiterate or go over here regarding this LPR stuff, I guess I will bid you adieu. But I do thank you guys once again. Let me drop my email address here in the chat for you guys. Someone is asking, is there going to be a recording available? Absolutely. Usually within a few hours of these things ending, we get the notification from Zoom that the recording is available. We absolutely put them on our YouTube channel to share with you guys. and we'll be more than happy to do so with you. If you do not mind either emailing me your email address or just somehow letting your sales rep know that you're interested in that recording, I will make sure that either myself or your sales rep gets it over to you. I see some of the kind words coming in the chat, and I really appreciate that. Thank you both. Always nice seeing you guys here. Yep, I got your email address, buddy. I will definitely send you the recording link. And thanks a lot. Really, you guys were a great crowd, asked very, very good questions, you know, and I appreciate it. I'm excited to talk to you guys more about this stuff on the next go around. I got you. I see your email address, buddy, and I will send you the recording as well. Thanks a lot, guys. You have my email address. If you have any questions that you come up with after the fact or any other, you know, anything else I can help you guys with, we're here for you. Take advantage. Ask us questions. Well, I'm a nerd. I love talking about this stuff. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate you taking the time to be with us here on this lovely morning.